Breaking news on YourIowa.com is brought to you by the Commission on U.S. Territories, striving for equal representation around the globe, and by Keep Iowa First, committed to keeping the Iowa caucuses the first in the nation contest in selecting the presidency of the United States. And now, here's your host, Brent Roske.
Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday to you. It is, the 14th of January. Couldn't be happier to have you along for the ride today. We've got an author and a publicist today with some really interesting things you want to stick around for. Up on the screen right now, that is a trailer for MLK FBI. That is directed by Oscar nominee Sam Pollard, who is actually going to be with us tomorrow. Now, this movie is getting incredible reviews. Washington Post says, MLK FBI builds a world, and once we're in it, takes us on a potent and unforgettable emotional journey. The director, Sam Pollard, he's worked with Spike Lee for many years. He produced Four Little Girls. He actually edited the classic Spike Lee films, Jungle Fever, Mo Better Blues. He is going to be on this program tomorrow, same time tomorrow morning. You want to check out that. And then in honor of Martin Luther King Day on Monday, we're going to have Dr. Franz Whitfield on. He is a Baptist minister here at Mount Carmel Baptist Church up in Waterloo. And he's going to be talking about finding inspiration in trying times, and obviously referencing Dr. King's work in his words. So very grateful to both Mr. Pollard and Dr. Whitfield for participating in our program to honor Dr. King's legacy this weekend. A quick little bit about news. Yesterday, in fact, President Trump was impeached for a second time, and Liz Lenz is a writer, lives here in Iowa, actually is a contributing writer to Washington Post, amongst other things, is scheduled to be on this program next Tuesday. And she tweeted this: "My 9-year-old thought impeachment was throwing peaches at bad leaders, and I don't know, something we should consider." I think that's... my wife and I got a kick out of that. So we will. I'm looking forward to chatting with Liz next week. She has a newsletter and a podcast, as well as being a contributing writer to, again, some major publications. So excited to have Liz here next week. But now let's bring up our first guest. I have known this person for many, many years, and she's got a brand new book. Thanks for being on the show, Rachel Smoka-Richardson. Thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome, Brent. Hello.
So where are we speaking to you from? Are you up there in Minnesota?
I am. I'm in Minneapolis, right by the airport.
Oh, perfect. It's interesting that it's just our neighbor state to the north. I was born and raised in Minnesota, but I've learned that Iowa and Minnesota definitely have different characteristics as far as people and places and all that sort of thing. So it's been interesting getting to know the Iowans down here. But so you've written a book, Millicent Simmonds, Actor and Activist. Folks, you can buy it right now on Barnes and Noble. What a fascinating story. There it is. I love it. Now, Rachel, why don't you tell us, why is Millicent Simmonds, what makes her story so special that you were compelled to write the book?
Sure. Well, she is an actress. She's a young actress. I think she's about to turn 18. And she's very spunky and very outspoken. And she also happens to be deaf, which is just one of her many characteristics. And so she decided that she wanted to be an actor. In grade school, she was seen her teacher noticed that she had quite the acting ability. And then, I don't know if you're familiar with the book Wonderstruck by Brian Selznick, which is a wonderful book. And they turned it into a movie, and they needed a deaf girl to play the part of Rose. And so she auditioned against hundreds of girls, and she was selected. So that was where she got her real acting start. And then John Krasinski chose her specifically to play the young girl in A Quiet Place.
It's obviously A Quiet Place, a gigantic hit. It was a breakaway hit. I know that John and his wife, who was starred in it as well, they were both personally surprised at how big a hit that movie was, and obviously then sequels, etc. It's an interesting topic that's come up recently. The musician Sia has made a movie now called Music coming out, and they're getting some criticism that it's telling a story about a young girl with autism, and that they didn't choose to use an actress who was autistic. Is that I think that's definitely poignant in regards to your book, no?
Absolutely. That's in Millicent's main advocacy, is to make sure that people with all abilities are cast in movies, and being very thoughtful about it. I mean, I know John Krasinski was very specific about wanting a deaf girl to play that role, and then he was so inspired by her that he wrote the sequel to the movie because of her.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so she really takes a front seat in the second movie, which I haven't seen because it was slated to come out at the very end of March last year. So it was canceled, along with COVID. So it's supposed to come out this year sometime.
So, Rachel, I'm right. This is your first book, yes?
It is. It's my very first published book, which is very exciting.
So that's not a small accomplishment. So congratulations. And so, a million topics under the sun. Why? Obviously, this sounds like an incredible topic, and congratulations. But why was this so special that made you? I mean, it's just a huge investment of time.
Sure. Well, I was in a Facebook group, and an editor from Capstone Press, who published the book, announced that she had an opportunity, and she was looking for somebody who had either was deaf themselves, or had deaf people in their family, and so I contacted her right away. She didn't say who the subject was going to be. She just said it was going to be a biography on somebody, and they needed somebody with some experience with the deaf culture. So I wrote back to her right away, because my mom has 3 sisters, and 2 of them are deaf. Oh. And so I've grown up, with closed caption TV, and, just the whole gamut. So it was really interesting to me, because I really wanted to honor my aunt's legacy. And actually, one of my aunts was a consultant on the book. She was my sensitivity reader, and made some really great suggestions on how to word things properly, and to make sure that it was being very inclusive.
That right there. So you had that relationship with someone that could say, this is questionable. You're right on the money there. What were some of the guardrails that she put up for you?
One of them that, I really had to keep in mind, and she made a couple of changes, was that obviously not all deaf people experience things the same way. And so she was very careful to catch whenever I would say deaf people do this, because not all deaf people would do that. There's all sorts of levels of abilities. My older aunt, my mom's oldest sister, she started, with hearing loss, and then gradually got more and more deaf. Whereas my younger aunt, who is the one who was the sensitivity reader, she was, pretty deaf from birth, and she had a completely different experience than my older aunt. My younger aunt was able to go to special schools for the deaf. She went to a college for the deaf. In fact, she works there now in Rochester, New York. And so each person has a completely different experience, and so she wanted to make sure that I captured that in the book.
And, I have to make a personal apology, because this program, when it broadcasts live, is not captioned. I'm working on, as soon as it's posted, the captions come up. But our system here does not do live captioning. And, it's a lot of the projects I've done have been traditional television. And that's, for when I just had a series on ABC here during the political campaigns, and, obviously before that gets delivered, it has to get captioned and all that. So it's definitely something that, I'm trying to get to the live broadcast as well, but it is there as soon as it's posted. But you were raised with that. So what, you must have early memories, when you were first meeting your aunts as a little chucker. How did your parents and family help you communicate, and how did they help you communicate when you were a little person?
Yeah, unfortunately, nobody in my family outside my Aunt Nancy knows how to sign. So that has always been a challenge. And that's actually a big part of Millicent Simmonds' life and the book, is that her mom, was very insistent that the entire family learn how to sign so that they were all able to communicate. And I think that's made a big difference. But yes, I mean, I grew up, caption TV was not unusual at our house. We, especially if we went to my grandma's house, I learned how to talk to my aunt on a TTY. And that was, of course, as a kid, you don't realize, oh, this is a communication tool. It was just, oh, cool. We get to, essentially old school text on Nancy. Well, and I remember being with her. She actually lived in Des Moines for a while, and I was with her at the Iowa State Fair. And it was just as when these little contraptions that meant that you could text, it wasn't a cell phone or anything. It was just this little contraption. And she was able to text her friends all over the fair. And I was just blown away because that's not something she's ever had before. So definitely the technology has made a huge difference. I know I talk to her more often because we can FaceTime. She can lip read. So you just have to, make sure that the camera is focused, squarely on your lips, and that but they're, of course, card games are normally loud in families, and ours were 10 times more loud. So, because everybody was screaming and trying to catch her attention, and she was screaming and trying to catch our attention. So, it's different, but it was great, and I'm glad.
Millicent Simmonds, actor and activist, is available at Barnes and Noble. Congratulations! What's your next big book project, Rachel?
So I have another book coming out in May 2022. It is a picture book this time for the younger readers. I co-wrote it with my friend Mark Seeley up here in Minneapolis, and it's called Cinderelliot. It is a gay retelling of Cinderella, where Cinderelliot may or may not find his own Prince Charming. So that's lots of fun. We're in the midst of finalizing art for that. And it's been a long process. It's been, by the time the book comes out, it'll be almost 2 years from when I signed the contract. So it's really exciting. Running Press Kids is publishing that book, and we're really excited to next spring to, hopefully we'll be able to do some book tours, and, I'm happy to come back and talk to you more about it. It's really exciting. It's a really fun book, and with an important message. So I think people will really enjoy it.
I love it. Well, we'll be happy to have you back on then. Congratulations on Millicent Simmonds, actor and activist.
Great.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to show the trailer for MLK FBI. Again, Oscar nominee Sam Pollard is going to be here tomorrow. We're going to show the trailer for his film that comes out just next week, and then we're going to be back on with Belle DuChene. She's going to talk about the intersection between business and fashion. Don't go anywhere.
Violence is self-defeating. He who lives by the sword will perish by the sword.
When you construct a man as a great man, there's nothing almost more satisfying than also seeing him as the opposite.
When the National Archive puts government documents up on the web, one has to confront them.
Tapes from the hotel rooms, FBI reports, those are pieces of information that we shouldn't have. The FBI was most alarmed about King because of his success.
He realized how sick this country was. We were trying to reveal the truth about segregation.
J. Edgar Hoover is famous for saying that he feared the rise of a black messiah.
The FBI says it's clear Martin Luther King Jr. is the most dangerous Negro in America, and we have to use every resource at our disposal to destroy him.
J. Edgar Hoover was the head of the FBI for 48 years.
The FBI's focus was collecting salacious sexual material of King with various girlfriends.
Hoover had made the speech that Martin Luther King was the world's most notorious liar.
Now, what am I going to do about Martin Luther King? Looks to me like he's too far gone.
This was a way that they could bring down a very influential black civil rights leader and contain the movement.
The FBI mailed the tape of Dr. King with other women, to him and to Coretta, with an advice that he should go kill himself.
The greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
Staying calm under fire is very hard when people are trying to kill you.
Anybody who was to the left of mainstream in civil rights was deemed a subversive.
They use surveillance in order to
Foment violence.
break apart these organizations.
They were running a surveillance state.
This represents the darkest part of the Bureau's history.
Folks, welcome back to the program, and I am thrilled to have Belle DuChene on. She is a publicist, and she's going to talk about fashion and business. Thanks for being on the program this morning, Belle.
Thanks, Brent. Thanks for having me on.
So our paths crossed during the presidential run. You were involved in promoting one of the other candidates. I was working with a different one, but so you've been down here in Iowa how long? What's your background, Belle?
I'm from Iowa, and after college, I moved out to New York City, and I was a full-time fashion show producer, which was kind of an awesome job. And then I went on to work at a modeling agency that took me to Chicago and London and doing all sorts of fun things. And then I went to grad school for public relations and communications. So I don't know what I'll end up doing in life, but I'm loving the ride so far.
So it's really interesting what we're going to talk about. So the intersection between business and fashion, you know, they always say, you know, the line is clothes make the person. And sadly, that first blush reaction that people get of people often turns into fiscal concerns. You know, will they get the job? Is that someone that a company wants to put forth, and it has the image of the company? And that conversation, we could go into many different areas, but we're going to talk about fashion today. So why don't you take it away, Belle?
Well, basically what we're seeing right now is a democratization of fashion, which is really kind of interesting. It used to be when I did the shows, I would do 40 shows at New York Fashion Week, and you had to have credentials to get in. It was very tough to see what was going on. We're just kind of like peering over, like, what celebrities are here? Who's backstage? It was just very, like a Wizard of Oz sort of type thing. And now those shows are online for the mass consumption of just anybody, which is kind of cool, right? So Paris just announced they're going 100% digital this month. Milan is not quite there, being 100% digital, but I think if I had to put money on it, New York is going to go completely digital as well. Just makes sense.
I never thought of that. Boy, you're right. The tickets to get into those events are, I mean, they're incredibly social events. And if folks, if you've not been to one of these things, runway down the middle, and everyone's just staring at each other. And of course, the clothes walk by, but everyone's just kind of glancing at who's here. What are they wearing? Yeah.
Yeah. Who's in the front row? Where is Anna Wintour of Vogue? Right.
A million years ago, well, not quite that long ago, but the Hollywood Forever Cemetery is right in Hollywood, and they actually have events there. They have screenings there. A friend of mine was a part of that whole thing, and they'd screen on the side of a building, but they would also have fashion shows there. A lot of the really, I don't know, risque and edgy fashion creators. I went to a show there, and they had the fog machines, and they had really ominous music. And I think it was, I want to say it was at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. It wasn't midnight, but we left at midnight. It was a fascinating kind of creepy look at fashion. But yeah, that's so interesting. The democratization of fashion, everyone has access to it. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it everywhere. Amazon has entered the luxury space with Oscar de la Renta, which is funny because Oscar de la Renta, rest in peace, was actually my first fashion show I ever did, which is kind of fun. But his brand is actually the first brand to enter the Amazon luxury space of Amazon fashion. So you don't have to live in New York to shop at Oscar now. You can go and click online. And I think the brands that are smart are going to follow suit. Ooh, that's a good one. Follow suit. I like it.
Nicely done. So you're saying that when you go to this Amazon page, it's their version of saying, instead of going to Rodeo Drive and walking into their $5 million a month or whatever it is store, that this is the virtual equivalent of that?
Yeah, you can click to buy. And I think a lot of people are going to go that way because let's just cash flow is tough right now, and these houses have to survive. You can go back into history, look at someone like Isaac Mizrahi, for example. He used to say, I cannot sell my jeans for less than thousands of dollars. I'm a designer. The guy was almost on the street. In fact, I think he literally was living on the street, got picked up by Target. And now guess what? The masses are wearing his jeans for $25 and he's a multimillionaire. So you have to go where the people are, right? It just makes sense.
You're saying he was down and out, but acting as if, huh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. With the blue steel the whole way, the I am fashion, that whole thing. I think that's passe. I think we're done with it. I think people want to reach up a little bit, and I think trickle down theory is going to happen a little bit more. And Oscar being on Amazon luxury fashion on the site is going to help that a lot.
Boy, you're talking about a sea change. So yesterday I had on my good friend Ian Kelly, and he's literally co-creating Julian Fellowes' new series. Julian Fellowes created Downton Abbey. One of Ian's earlier projects was called Beau Billum, and this is a movie about a real guy who changed fashion. I mean, Ian's words were, "There's never been anyone who single-handedly changed fashion more." And he brought the English aristocracy from the big wigs and the face paint and all that. And he said, "Let's get rid of all that. You look foolish." And he literally designed the precursor to what has become the modern suit that a man would wear with a tie and all that sort of thing. And what you're talking about, this egalitarian look at high fashion, I think obviously influenced by the pandemic, but I think it's also reflected in, a lot of the big award shows viewership is down. A lot of the pomp and maybe the artifice that's been created around things, maybe people are starting to look past that.
Well, I think it's sort of lost some of its sheen, but not only that, it's very expensive for a house to put all of that together. And so it's sort of if you are a family of four struggling to make ends meet, looking for that next paycheck all the time, is that your time to go to Disney? No. So, if you think about a designer, when you're kind of, bleeding cash and trying to figure out where you're going to end up, it might not be the time to be spending thousands and tens of thousands of dollars on the hoopla, when really, what is the point of a fashion show? It is to show what you've been up to the buyers and to the editors, so the people who are going to buy it for the stores and the people who are going to write about it. So that's what you're trying to do. So just get your stuff to them. It's kind of, let's be more succinct about this and a little bit cheaper.
So I'm a member of the Producers Guild. That's the guild that produces film and television. And a lot of it is basically event production. It's event logistics. We got to get all the stuff here. And of course, you with producing events, talk about some of the challenges you would face when putting on these shows.
How much time do we have?
She goes, I can't. I'll have a breakdown in front of you. No.
Oh my goodness. Well, we've all seen The Devil Wears Fashion, or what is it? Devil Wears Prada. Sorry, Devil Wears Prada, and that was coming out when I was graduating from college. So I wanted that job. I wanted the clackers where I would work at a magazine and hear click, 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 like the heels of my boss coming down and chasing me down the hallway. And I got that job. Actually, I was working in a really tough industry, in a very tough part of the industry. My boss was actually one of the first African-American female models ever. And she would do all of the Ebony Fashion Week shows, and she saw mass chaos backstage. And she said, let me fix this. So she had a protocol. She had ways to train dressers. There's actually a very specific way to train a dresser to dress someone for a show. Little things like when someone comes backstage and they have to change their look, you'd probably think, well, let's take off the shoes and the dress, and then let's get her into the next dress. That would actually be terribly wrong. You would actually want to get her in her new shoe, because if she needs to get into line, because she's about to go back out on stage to all these fashion editors and Anna Wintour, but she doesn't have her shoes on, she can't walk. So there are so many times where I'd have shoes on my model and be walking her to the line while pulling her dress over her head. And just before she gets to the curtain, it's like the last button goes on and she goes out. But if I had waited to do the shoes, I'd be fired, right? That would be a disaster. So things like that were always crazy. But I have memories of flying down Fifth Avenue with a steamer and an ironing board and an iron. Like, I need to get to Lacoste in 10 minutes. What am I going to do? And you're just running and running, and it's crazy. But, you know, I was in my 20s. I don't think I could do it anymore. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to, but it was a fun time in my life. But I have so many stories. We could have coffee and talk about it for days. There was a day when Donna Karan almost backhanded me. It's a long story. It was a very high stress moment backstage where there was a mix up with a garment, and I wouldn't have known it, but she knew that this hunter green was different from this slightly more Kelly hunter green, and I didn't know, and she was trying to pin things, and then she ended up borrowing my bra because her assistant forgot hers. You know, you've got stories too.
You know, that's I don't have any Donna Karan borrowed my bra stories.
You haven't lived. You have not lived until Donna Karan borrows your bra.
You know what great little illustrations of that is a hectic world. I've been at arm's length at those shows, knowing people involved. A friend of mine, Robert, produced a couple of them, and I know some of the people involved up on the stages, and so intense. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. And it's almost like all the people in the audience, especially the editors you mentioned and all that, they're looking for something to inspire them. They're also looking for the easy thing, to write about. So if there's a mistake, sadly, that's going to be the first or second line in the article.
If you Google Jessica Stam, S-T-A-M, also, ironically, the first model I ever dressed at Oscar de la Renta, everything is so full circle. Jessica Stam is my favorite model of all time. But if you just Google Jessica Stam fails, you've had a little trouble. It's funny. It's not funny. It's not funny, but it's kind of funny. It's just, those are slippery places to walk. But what's endearing about her is when she falls, she smiles and she's like, oh man, she gets back up. It's kind of endearing and kind of fun, but those are very high pressure situations. I was actually out in Hollywood for Victoria's Secret. I was booked through a production company to go out there, and that's a totally different thing because that is taped in advance. And so if there was a mistake, we could go back and fix it. But that was an entire week of hair and tulle and hairspray. A lot of details. So a lot of money goes into those shows. It's going to be really different to see how things happen, with politics and business and fashion. They all are intertwined. But after the Me Too movement, now we're saying bye-bye to Victoria's Secret. I mean, all these things are really interesting cultural phenomenons that aren't just for those who studied fashion or who do design. It's escaping our reality in our culture, right? So these are things that I think are interesting for everybody.
So yesterday, Lisa Marks, who's an author, she actually wrote one of the books on the shelf there, Ryan is Ready for You Now, which is all about entertainment journalism. She has been helping us out with media picks now that we're all on lockdown. And one of her recent ones she just watched is a new documentary that I haven't seen about Halston, who was born and raised here in Des Moines. And in this documentary, I saw a different piece at the Design Center about him and Warhol. But in this documentary, they actually film him come back to Iowa, and because for a long time he wouldn't even talk about where he was raised. I'm just wondering, so your personal journey took you from New York, and now you're back here in Iowa. How long have you been back, and how has the transition been?
I came back for grad school in 2010. I went to UNI up in Cedar Falls, and then I moved down to Des Moines 2 years later to work at Meredith Corporation. Sure. And I bopped around working in journalism. It's been really nice. My feet don't hurt as much in Iowa. I noticed that right away. It's just people here are very kind. I think New Yorkers are kind too. You just got to get out of their way. But I enjoy that you can make your life fast-paced here if you want to. But if you want to kind of lay back and enjoy the scenery, you can do that too. And I do remember when I first moved back and someone opened a door for me at a gas station or somewhere, I kind of hopped back a little bit and had to take in and say, what is this person doing? Oh, you're being nice. Oh, thank you. I just wasn't used to it. I was not used to it. But there are definitely some things here. You know, what's interesting too about this democratization of fashion is that, do you know Poshmark? Have you ever heard of Poshmark before, the app?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm always worried about local retailers, and technically everybody can be a local retailer because Poshmark is an app where you can sell your fashion online, or you can buy fashion, because during the COVID, everyone's buying fashion online. So vintage things are coming back. People are reselling vintage and buying those back and forth. And Poshmark's been around for about 9 years. It's a free app where it's just peer-to-peer selling, but they're going public and they're having great success with raising $200-some million. And so I think it's really interesting that if you're a local retailer and you're not going to where the masses are, don't pull an Isaac Mizrahi and say, well, I'm not interested in that because maybe you don't know. Seek out the knowledge and get there, because there's, you know, millions of dollars. I think 130 million items have been sold on Poshmark. So you might as well try it out, right?
Don't pull a Mizrahi. I wrote that down. I'm sure he's a wonderful person. I don't know him, but that's a fun phrase. Belle DuChene, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have you come back and talk about something else fascinating. You know, I'd never thought about this democratization of fashion, but I think that ripples through so many other aspects of our life. And I think anytime we can empower people and make people live fuller and greater lives, that's literally why I created this show. So thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks for what you do. See you soon.
Folks, we're going to be back tomorrow with Oscar-nominated director Sam Pollard. He made MLK FBI. And then Monday, Dr. Franz Whitfield, inspired by the teachings of Dr. King, is going to teach us about finding inspiration in trying times. That's tomorrow and Monday. I'll see you then.